Call the meeting to order. Invocation be back. Reverend at the top. I'm sorry, Lena. I'm sorry. I was reading my old notes. Please rise and turn off your cell phones, please.
Right. Heavenly Father, we're very thankful. Wake up in a country, a state, and a county, city, where your children play. We're thankful that we have representatives, council members who gives their time and their efforts and their energy to make the outline of the world. Dear Lord, we pray for all the citizens. We especially know that some people may not have been prepared for clothing and shelter. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask the blessing upon this table tonight. Dear Lord, help the council members to have the information that they need to make good decisions that are good for the citizens of our country and also good for your kingdom. We ask all this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and the notice was posted at 1:45 p.m. on October 12, 2018.
We have no presentations today, so we'll move on to reports. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do. It's been a long time.
Good evening. I think my last city manager report was in July. I spared you all, sorry. I want to update, first of all, on personnel matters, staffing issues. We currently have 12 positions open that we'll be advertising for this week. We've got 2 positions for the police department, 1 in dispatch, 2 in building services, 2 in wastewater, and 2 in streets. Those are replacement positions. And newly budgeted positions, 1 animal control officer, an additional person in administration, 1 in finance, and 2 for facilities. We've had 15 new employees hired and retained since June 15th. I think there are 3 or 4 that we hired that did not make it through their 90-day, but we hired and retained 15. So we currently have a total staff of 71. At this time, I'd like to express my condolences, and I'm sure yours as well, to the family of Lupe, who was our HIDA clerk, who passed away yesterday morning. That is one position that we will be posting as well this week. Just want to see the family. The family is coming in from out of town. Be sure to express your condolences to them. It was sudden, very unexpected. As far as retention efforts go, kind of going back to my kind of 90-day chart and report that I did. The organizational chart was updated in March. That is complete. The wage scale and position category chart is now complete. The new wages that were approved through the budget and on this wage chart have been implemented as of October 1st. And so we are now working on the compression issues, but we're utilizing the evaluation process and merit applications as well as goal setting to address the compression issues with the rest of the staff. The updated handbook is almost complete. We've got today's job descriptions and then maybe 5 or 6 more before we're done with that. And then we can finalize putting the rest of the handbook together. You will probably have 2 weeks to review that. We're working on putting old and new side by side so you can compare what was in the old handbook to what's going to be in the new handbook. Aside from the policies that council approved in June or July, there haven't really been changes. What we've done is taken the old policies, kind of updated the wording on it and made them more easy to understand, as well as provided some guidance, not only to the supervisors, but to the employees on following through with those policies and the required paperwork to go along with those policies. So there's a kind of clearer view as to the intent and the process. Again, the job descriptions that you have tonight, it's just another handful, and then like I said, I think there's just a few that are remaining on there. We started a series of scheduling regular meetings, and so myself, the Director of Finance and City Secretary will be meeting bi-weekly. The directors and myself will be meeting monthly, all directors, managers, and supervisors bi-monthly, and all employees quarterly. On the goal toward building internal capacity, we have set the benchmarks through the budget process. We met yesterday with the directors, managers, and supervisors to discuss how to properly look at those benchmarks, to utilize those benchmarks and measurements and in their reports so that we can follow throughout the year. We also included a 1-hour training on the employee evaluation process and how to set goals and how to follow through with those evaluations and then how to continue through that process throughout the year, not just once a year, in addressing personnel performance issues or improvement issues. For employee engagement, we kind of planned an activity. I say kind of planned an activity because we know what we want to do for Thanksgiving. We just haven't ironed out all the details yet. It'll take place throughout November. We planned a toy drive in December. We're looking at an opportunity to do a Christmas gathering for the employees also in December, and we are planning additional activities through the spring and into the summer to keep the employees engaged, not just in their workplace, but out in the community. Any questions so far?
That's something that's been neglected forever, neglected. So resurrecting it now, making it.
I'm trying. Some of it is in serious CPR.
Yeah, it's not an easy task.
One of the challenges, Jessica, I know in all organizations, particularly when you start putting some pros and chapters in place, there's a lot of pushback, particularly in an organization like this that hasn't had those set. Have you thought about doing an employee climate evaluation, get some anonymous feedback about how things are going? That's the trade. How do you get performance checkers in place the other time, keep them around the right spot?
We have thought about it, and we're looking at doing kind of like a Survey Monkey type of thing. It's an anonymous online. We're trying to get all the employees their own email address, so that we can communicate directly with them, and they'll have an opportunity to participate in those short little surveys that will go out. We want to do something like that monthly, just to also let them know that this isn't just a one-time opportunity for feedback. We want them to give us continual feedback on what we're doing and where we're going with it. We want to make sure that the employees are sharing the same vision that the rest of us have for the organization. The employee email is a big thing because there are probably only a third of the staff have city emails. So it is difficult to reach out to them to get feedback from them, so to keep them informed in what's going on. And so a lot of times we'll have them come in and, well, I just need to ask the city manager a quick question. So is this true? Is this really happening? because they hear bits and pieces and then it turns into more of like a rumor than actually what was said. So I'd like to have the emails all in place and then be able to kind of update them on a monthly basis and then give them a chance to do those surveys to let us know what's on their minds.
Will they be able to access the email?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a VPN issue.
No. Mm-hmm. Yes. We are working on the employee portal on the website. And so each employee will also be, that email address will be their login, and then they'll set a password, and through that employee portal, they'll also get to see notices. And they'll have access to all the employee forms, the handbooks. They'll have access to training modules through there. And additional portals that'll link in so they can do training at home if they want, or be able to log in when they've got time to do quick 30-minute webinars or things like that from wherever they're at. So that portal we're expecting to be up, hopefully complete by the end of the year. I think the portal itself will be up by the end of this month. And then we'll be adding different aspects to it. Eventually their check stubs will be available through their employee portals, so they'll be able to know what their current vacation and time hours are that are available. And so we want it to be a full employee access through the portal. Any other questions on personnel and staffing?
Good.
On other projects, water, wastewater, and streets continue to be the primary focus. It's where we have the most activity when it comes to complaints and work orders. I'm not going to get into what Chris is presenting here later, but many of you are aware of the notice that we had to issue. We had some leaks on some major lines that required us to have to issue that, and those notices are set through the ordinance, but the ordinance kind of follows what's recommended by the state in issuing those notices, and it wasn't based on the quality of the water, it was based on the capacity of the storage tanks at the time. So there wasn't really a concern with contamination in the water, it was just that the leaks had had reduced the storage.
So just a little bit of feedback. You know, got the email or whatever it was that says, you know, we're having Class B restrictions. I have no idea what Class B restrictions are. And I suspect most have no idea.
We'll kind of get to that here later on. But so your current drought and contingency conservation plan has not been updated in a number of years, and so it's using language that probably hasn't been used in a while. They don't really call them B's and C's anymore. They're more, there's different wording that tells the public, gives the public a little bit more insight into what is actually happening. Because does A, B, and C go up, or does it go down? Is this critical? Is this not?
All my feedback is, rather than say Class B restrictions, the message ought to say, stop running your line, or whatever, or only use it for essential purposes.
Yeah.
Was it 207 or 9 did say, don't water, don't wash cars.
So in the actual press release that went out, it had all that information. It just depends on how they relay that.
Class B.
Oh, is that all you got?
That's what I got. I literally said, implementing Class B water restrictions. And that's my, and I
Wasn't sure what to do. I was like, is that bad or good, or is it in the middle?
yeah,
I don't know.
So we definitely need to do some public awareness.
yeah, that's,
And so we'll get to a little bit more of that here later, because there are a lot of things that I think we need to continue to do as far as education with the public. So from my understanding, we hadn't had to issue any kind of notice in probably like 4 or 5 years. So just pulling up an old one that we had used in the past was kind of like, forget it. We just got to create another one. And we just followed what was in the book. So At TML, last week, we were able to meet up with a lot of vendors in the areas of projects that we've been working on, specific to streets. Some of the equipment people have offered to come out and do some demos on equipment. Really looking forward to the zipper people coming in because they have also offered to do a couple of streets for us as part of their demo with their bigger, wider, faster, stronger machine. So that'll be scheduled, and then we'll be looking at doing that replacement. So a lot of kind of when they're working with the zipper here, it is a smaller size zipper. So they don't tend to use it on larger projects because they have to kind of go back and forth, back and forth. So with this one, he was kind of telling us that with 2 passes, it could do a whole block. And it would be a little bit easier than what they're doing right now. But we are still working on the plan for the streets as part of the strategic plans. But we'll get it. So as far as focusing on transparency, the updates to the website are and will continue to be ongoing. We're currently pricing technology designed for financial transparency, as well as civic engagement tools that will be available. Technology has changed a lot. It used to be that your software that you purchased for your city was one of your major capital improvement purchases. I'm not saying that it's cheap now, but it's not as expensive. There are a lot of options out there now for cities based on sizes, and it's not kind of got to go with ground level or skyscraper anymore. There's a lot in between. And so we're working on that, and hopefully by December, we'll be able to present something to council as far as where we want to go with that software. We are looking at an all-encompassing software. Currently, here in City Hall, we are working off of 4 different softwares. And so somebody's job there is to pull information and then manually enter it into another software to combine all that information together. The courts use a different software. The police department uses a different software. The code enforcement office is using a different software right now. They're not using any software. Cynthia was on a different program, and she's not using that anymore because that crashed. So we're looking at an all-encompassing software where if they issue a ticket, when it gets filed in the court, it hits our GL, and there's not 3 people that have to handle that transaction to transfer that data. The building permit gets issued. It comes all the way through to GL, so there's still not multiple people handling that transaction. And the pricing's coming in pretty reasonable. So I'm kind of excited about that. The civic engagement that goes with that is an app that's available for citizens to use on a PC at home or on a smartphone, where they can put in, I've got a pothole, hit a tab, it'll identify through GIS a location. When they hit submit, if they click pothole, it'll automatically create a work order for the street department. When the street department fills it, it sends us a notice as well as the sender that the work order has been complete. And it also provides assistance when it comes to inventory and time management. How long did it take them to complete that work order? They have to kind of enter what materials were utilized in completing that work order. And so that's on the back end for us to assess and look at inventory and cost control. Same for the leaks. They'll be able to enter the material that they're utilizing, how long it's taking them, and that's going to provide us some additional insight to the actual cost on these smaller items. That will tie into the software, so now we don't have to manually go out and count pipe and count valves and come back and then adjust inventory on the asset side. So we're kind of really excited about that. You guys should be really excited. We've been assessing the various revenue sources, and so pretty soon council will have an opportunity to review the proposal to update the fees for various city services, from animal control all the way to rezonings and building permits. It has been a number of years since the city has addressed that. there are departments that are assessing fees that have never been incorporated into an ordinance, and then there are departments that are not charging fees that are in ordinances. And so we're trying to get all those listed out, do a comparison in the region with what other cities are charging on those fees, and that way you get a full kind of consolidated list that we can update regularly through a master fee ordinance rather than 15 different ordinances. The consolidation of the utility services has proven to have its own challenges, separate from everything else. We're looking at early 2019 to have that complete. The software is a portion of that, as well as billing cycles and personnel is all part of those challenges that we're trying to overcome to get that done. But we're still looking at January, maybe March at the latest, for full consolidation on those utility services. Let's see. Strategic plans for streets and transportation, parks, water and wastewater. Tonight we've got the RFQ for parks. Next month you'll have the water and wastewater RFQ for needs assessment, the rate analysis, and the streets. Will hopefully be ready for your in November, so that you all can award them in December and they can get started in January. Part of that, the RFQs you have tonight is the TWDB application. We originally had an October 5th deadline to submit that application. We were not able to meet that, so we're going to go ahead and procure the engineer on it, and then follow through with the financial advisor and bond counsel. And hopefully in January they'll have a second release of funds that we'll be able to submit for. So public awareness, outreach. Tonight you also have the social media policy, which is one aspect of doing public awareness and information. We want to make sure that we're using all of the technology and resources that are available to us to reach all the different aspects of our city. So a lot of people are already, they have Facebook, they have Twitter or Instagram. We want to be able to reach them on their mobile devices in case of emergency, but we also want to utilize traditional media outlets to get word out for more lengthy things, because nobody likes to read a 3-page Facebook post about what a level B notice means. So we want to be able to use that and then direct them back to the website for more information on the social media side, but use traditional media to really get a little bit more into the weeds about what some of the things are that we're doing. Monthly public meetings. We're looking at reestablishing the city manager's blog. That kind of went away with the old website, so we've got to kind of get the developer to put that back in there so we can update that. Doing media days, other outreach events. I'm really pleased that I was able to find a local nonprofit to work with our Parks Board to move forward with the idea of offering free movies. We're going to have our first one, we believe, in December for Christmas as part of the Christmas activities here in the Civic Center. And the movie will be offered for free. They're currently looking for a sponsor to pay for the licensing. The local nonprofit is going to help with the outreach and promotion, as well as providing beverages and popcorn. And then the Parks Board will be volunteering to help set up and then take down at the end of the evening as well. If that one works out well, then we're looking at doing a series through the spring, continuing to use the Civic Center until the summer, and it gets warm enough, and then we can also use the spring to purchase the equipment necessary for those summer movie nights. In the economic development area, tourism marketing, Chris Rugia and I have been working on what I would call more aggressive marketing of Alpine, reaching out. We've submitted 3 proposals to different groups for them to host their annual or regional meetings here in Alpine. It's not something that Alpine has done in the past, so preparing these proposals and then getting feedback where we're submitting them is part of that process this year. Once we have a good handle on what our hotel occupancy is and meeting room availability and capacity is, we'll be able to really put a little stronger effort into that and go after some of the more consistently held regional meetings in the area. The proposal that went out most recently was for a small group. And so we kind of felt, let's try that one because that's a good one for us to kind of practice on. Maybe we'll get lucky with it, even though it was practice. But that's kind of putting a full proposal package together with all that, continuing to work with the hotels to make sure that they're working with event organizers and they're letting us know kind of what their occupancy rates look like through different times so that we can focus on bringing those meetings in to fill those gaps. The 380 incentive program, we're looking at January for that. I'd like to, once kind of have a draft, have a chance to present it to the chamber, get some feedback from those businesses, go to the downtown association, present it to them, get some feedback from them before it comes to council for the first review and reading of it. I did speak to someone yesterday who is interested in doing some development, commercial development here in Alpine. Said they would be very interested to see what we would be offering in that 380 package for investment. Just to kind of give you an idea, they're looking at building a new hotel. They're also very interested in doing the hotel conference center idea. Another developer that I spoke with a few weeks ago is looking at doing a commercial kind of shopping center strip here. They've got a property in mind and they are calling it a redevelopment. I'm not sure which one they're looking at, but they said they would probably have about 10 to 12 storefronts through it. But they wanted to know if we had any redevelopment initiatives. And I'm like, well, let me add that to the list. Not quite yet. Met with Matt Schmidt, who's out of the Governor's Office for Economic Development, the Workforce Commission on job training and job programs for here. We've got some ideas for summer youth programs. Hopefully that will help us kind of fill the gap for our lifeguard situation in the summer, because they will pay for the lifeguard certification that a lot of our young people don't have. But on the job programs that are from 16 to 25-year-olds, where they pay us to give that age group an opportunity to come in. They give us funding for 90 days or 180 days, depending on the job. They basically pay that person's wages and costs. We get to employ them. If they don't work out, we're not required to keep them. But the intent is to train them and utilize the resources that the Workforce Commission has so that we can build a better workforce and retain more employees for the city. Let's see. They are also looking, and if anyone knows of anyone in this field, they do not currently have anyone certified here in Alpine as daycare providers. So the state, if there is a certified daycare provider, the state will send applicants who have children or have daycare needs to those daycares, and the state pays for their daycare. So they don't have anyone here. They have a lot of people who have not been able to obtain a job because they don't have enough, they don't have the resources to work and pay daycare. So a lot of them say, well, it's easier for me to stay home than it is for me to go to work and pay daycare. I'm working to pay daycare. So the program pays for daycare. When I met with them, they said, if you know of anybody who has a daycare that wants to be certified, we will help them go through that process to get that certification. and then help them get participants, I guess, what do you call daycare kids?
So there's daycares here in Alpine.
But none of them are certified through the state for this program. So they usually have, so even the community center daycare is not receiving funding from the state through this program.
So they may not be aware of it.
They may not. I did refer them there because as far as I know, that's the largest daycare.
Yep.
They were going to try to get a meeting with them as well as the daycare at Sol Ross. And so the daycare up at Sol Ross is really focused on students and professors. If you're not employed or a student, you're kind of at the bottom of the waiting list. So they said if there's anyone else that wants to start their own daycare, we'll help them through that process, including going through SBDC for funding if they need funding. But they said we could probably put more people to work in Alpine if they could find some daycare support for the applicants that they're looking for. Into housing, the annexation, of course, is complete. We'll start the rezoning process here pretty soon for that. They are, I don't know if Victor has already received preliminaries. When I spoke with them week before last, they said they'd have preliminaries in pretty soon on that development. They are looking, they're looking at moving pretty quickly in the development phase as far as submitting the preliminary plans, getting those approved and getting things done. So then they can reach out to their investors and start putting the capital together to get that project done. The partnership that we started with Purdue, Brandon, and the other 10 attorneys in the farm firm is moving along. Council approved one bid that was done already on one property. We've got 13 additional properties that once that 30 days expires, if there's no response, then those ones will go up for bid. They are all over the city. Some of them are empty lots. Some of them have buildings or structures on them. So those will come up also, and we'll be able to really start moving like that. I know Victor's been shorthanded, so I'm not sure how much he's been able to feed into that process. But they're kind of going through utility billing and taxes and those kind of things to identify the properties that can go up the quickest. And then another developer has contacted me wanting to get some information about annexation and infrastructure for a affordable housing development. Not like the one we're doing over here for rent. These are actual houses to put first-time homeowners in using federal housing money and state credits to put them into. I believe they said the lender for the project is out of Dallas. And so this particular lender, they don't have to go with this lender, but this lender is available to help them obtain the reductions to the cost of the home. They're looking at 20 to 30 homes to the loan. You're going to have to annex because I don't think we have any land in the city large enough for that. So that's what's coming up. That's what we're working on. And that's a snapshot.
That was like a panoramic.
That's a snapshot of what a day consists of. That was just today, but. Any questions?
What do you do in your spare time?
Sleep.
Great report.
Yes, great report. Yeah. You're bringing us up-to-date information needs too. Okay, we'll go on to city staff updates. We'll have Chris Wright, the Public Director.
Good evening. Tonight's will not be a reading as last month. My deepest apologies for last month. We will do the highlight reel tonight. We'll start with the gas utilities department first. You'll see the Leak investigates, leak surveys, nothing of any notable issues there. Everything's pretty much the same as that. The Plum Street survey is in process, just so you know. It's just being delayed by some normal operations. The next page you'll see on the DEMP project, I wanted to give you guys a little bit better visual observation of the DEMP and how it's moving forward. You'll notice the blue section is the amount that has been worked up to date, and in the orange section is the amount that is what is remaining. So that you understand, the DEMP project works on a calendar year basis, and it would appear that we are late in the game for the amount that's done. But so you know, each year, according to our gas manager, that the majority of their work is done during this time frame each year. So within the next month or two, that slice of the pie is going to get a lot bigger. And also throughout the months as they go along, they have main lines put in, but they cannot account for them towards their totals until they're officially connected to the system. Just to kind of give you guys a heads up on that. There's a TLM IRP on-site survey report, and the thing to take from that is there was a 99% performance issue rate. So very good marks for them to get again. There's currently one position open. Do you guys have any questions about the gas? All right, we'll move right along to the water utilities department. You see our water production has slowly decreased as the weather gets colder. People tend to use a little less water. The water leaks have been, roughly the same amount that they have been. Our active service connections have gone down, and I would just attribute that to people coming and going. On the wastewater side, our treated gallons of gas wastewater pretty much same average as what we've generated and produced on the water side. And our reuse, as you'll notice, the reuse for this month particularly was low. It just was not called for this month, so coming with water. Sewer backups there has been a slight increased trend there, and I would say that is probably due to some delayed maintenance over many years, and we are working towards getting those addressed in the very near future. And we have 2 open positions within the water utility department. Have any questions on the water utility?
Chris, just on the backups, have you pretty well got sorted out what's property owner responsibility, what's city's responsibility?
We are still trying to draw the line, because I realize that on the water side, where it comes to what is the customers and what is the cities, there's a very fine definition, which is the meter. We don't have meters on our sewer lines, so we can't draw that line. So there is a little bit of a gray area to that, and we are working to get a definitive where that line in the sand is for us and the customer. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I noticed on your graph on page 1 regarding active water service connections of billed accounts.
Yes, sir.
In July, we had 2751, and then apparently for September, 2727. The difference of 24. But give me an idea of why it is.
I can only presume that may be just because what these are based on how many active accounts there are. So it could be people like your renters leaving out, and those haven't been turned back on.
But that means that they close their accounts and they're delinquent accounts?
They are just no longer being billed, so it could be the combination of those. Any other questions on the water utility? All right, we'll move right along to environmental services. As you can see, the recycling center attendees are pretty much on par with last month's for both in and out of the city. I took Mr. Stevens' recommendation for the graphs here to kind of help you guys see things a little better on the, how things are coming and going out at the recycling center here. So you can see everything is still on the itemization, it's still pretty much about the same. Currently, all of the positions are filled within the recycling center. That's the environment service. And just as a big congratulations to us and to Bridgestone for the Proving Ground Texas tire disposal today. It was a success. Something that you folks did not get to see last month is some statistics on the landfill. On the landfill, their numbers reset on September 1st each year. So these numbers will be running from this month as we go on, so you'll know what we're doing as we move forward this year. So you can see the C&D and the MSW, which is your construction and demolition versus your municipal solid waste, and what's being placed there. And on our pie charts, those are basically showing you where we're progressing through the year. So you can see, keep track of where we are as we go through the year.
So there's a lot more construction than demo.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you're, from my understanding, your construction demo, that's not anything that's coming through your general pickup. Your MSW is your general pickup, your local trash can. Your C&D is what's coming in through the landfill entrance.
Apparently, you have a good number of people that are non-residents in Alpine using the recycling center. Where are they coming from?
Oh, on the recycling center? Those are from all the surrounding areas. Brewster County, Fort Davis.
Counties as well.
Yes.
The other thing is, how many tires did we get rid of?
I don't believe we got an actual count, but it was an entire truckload, 18-wheeler truckload. There was probably in the magnitude, I think the estimate was well over 1,000. But yeah, it was a very successful one. The citizens were very happy to be able to properly dispose of the tire. On the last page here, it's kind of going on the landfill thing. These are some extra numbers here on recyclables that are received into the landfill. These numbers that you see here in these charts as we move forward, these numbers will not count against your totals at the landfill for what they have to report that is being put into the landfill. These get put to the side, and these are here for your information, so you can kind of see what we're bringing in. Some of this is going to be, well, the majority of these items are going to be things that are taken to the landfill from the recycling center. And since we don't have the means at our recycling center to weigh each person in that convenience, this is actually a weight measurement of what's coming in from the recycling. And that's all I have for you folks. Yes, sir.
Chris, something you just may want to look at, I'm just
Yes,
doing the math. Between the C&D and the MSW for a month, that's roughly 1,200 tons. I think my math close. And if you multiply that times 12, that's going to be like 15,000 tons. And our capacity is what are we here, so 7,300 tons.
On each side, yes, sir. Oh, I see what you're saying, yes, sir.
So you don't need to work through the math right now. My sense though is based upon the rate numbers from last month, that says you kind of went through your capacity for 7 or 8 months.
Well, I don't have a previous month here to track from. This is just
Oh,
this
I understand. So what happens when we get more than 7,300 tons? Do we turn off the dump or we create more space?
Actually, they when it gets to the point where they are approaching their limits, and they monitor it out there very closely as they go through the month. These numbers are based on a true figure, which is, I believe, he said it's 22 tons a day So it's actually a daily calculation. So they're actually monitoring it on a daily basis. So if there's too much at any time, they can throttle what's coming in.
You're just looking at these 1 month's numbers.
Yes, yes.
I know it's not a trend, you may want to take a look.
Yes.
Try to look at, I don't think capacity is an issue out there, but understanding what drives the 7,300 ton max, is that a TCEQ requirement or that's what we set that?
It's based on a permit.
That's our permit.
Yes. And like I said,
We're
that,
consistently hitting that mark. So occasionally, they may take some of our waste, to another landfill. Or Stockton, Presidio, depending on who can take it. What is taken actually to the landfill, they can reject if what they're picking up, this was all the waste side goes, they control what comes in from the gate, daily
That
basis.
I understand, yeah.
But if it gets to that point, there are mechanisms with TCQ that we will submit, letting them know either that we give the capacity of the permit. And if you do that often enough, then you have to update the permit to increase your.
I just think about the amount of construction that's going on. Our CME is going to, in my view, will continue to climb. It's going to put some stress on our MSW side. We just probably want to make sure we're at that.
and like I said, this 7,300 it's an evaluation based on the 20 and 22 tons per day.
I understand that. Your requirements, I think, are going to go higher than you probably have on the permit.
Right. We'll definitely keep an eye on it. Do we have anything else?
Okay, city manager for public hearings.
Mayor, our first public hearing is to obtain citizens' views and comments of ordinance number 2018-09-02, repealing ordinance 2017-0503, which designated to install a no parking sign to block parking 70 feet on the east side, south of Silveros Avenue, and north 5th Street, and to include only right-hand turn at east and west intersections of Silveros Avenue and 5th Street.
Any comments? Yes, sir.
Dave Lambert, Ward 5. If I read this correct, this is to remove that right-hand turn
Yes.
and reestablish. I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of it going there to begin with. I don't think it's done properly. I know TxDOT didn't approve of it. Talking to Chris. So I urge you, the other citizens probably will, to remove that. We have people in Texas not plates that go straight. And stop regular citizens. I can see a little bit of a no parking on the east side, but not 70. They're putting all that parking right into the bank. I know Dave's not that. I urge you to put it back to what it used to be.
Mayor, if I may, I think the wording on this public hearing is actually incorrect. It's not repealing the entire ordinance, it is only repealing the right turn only direction. It is not repealing
Any more comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the next one. City manager.
Mayor, the next public hearing is to obtain citizens' views and comments of ordinance number 2018-09-03, repealing ordinance 2016-04-01, establishing no parking zones as follows. No parking for the first 25 feet south of the railroad tracks on the east side of South 5th Street. No parking with the exception of 20-minute loading zone for the remainder of the area fronting Princo on the east side of South 5th Street. No parking on the west side of South 5th Street from the intersection of 5th and Murphy south to the alley.
The south of the railroad tracks are in the that shouldn't be able. No parking for the
that's right in the two.
So it's just removing the ones in front of Preco and on. So those are the other ones, they're different ordinances. So on B, that ordinance should only repeal the no parking in front of Preco and repeal the no parking on the west side of South Fifth Street. Intersection. Help to me out. Is that going up?
It's,
That's the one that's right on the west side. Behind where the Waspa is.
Yeah. and it's stripped
Okay,
right there.
it's
The
already
Ritchie with the Ritchie.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, and then it's the.
So number 2, just print.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do the next one. See,
I was gonna say the other part was probably make Ritchie and the Gavaletta and Ross.
There used to be parking on both sides of the street, and it's really hard to drive.
to
It's
just,
kind of narrow, and you have to take turns, and I'm just to do that. Parking, I mean, I cover that no parking thing.
The next public hearing is to obtain citizens' views and comments of ordinance number 2018-09-04, repealing ordinance 2008-09-07, designating to place traffic control signs and designating an area in front of digital studios, a loading and unloading zone.
okay, any questions? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the next one.
Next public hearing is to obtain citizens' view and comments of ordinance number 2018-09-05, repealing ordinance 2010-04-01, which designated no parking on the east side of 6th Street on the 100 block of North 6th Street and designating a loading and unloading zone.
Any comments? Seeing none, let's go to the next one. E,
Next is the public hearing to obtain citizens' views and comments concerning an application for replat for Keith and Catherine Nixon. Property identification, street address is 503 and 505 John West Road, Alpine, Texas 79860. Legal description is Carpenter Edition, Block 13, Lot S8 and 9. Property owner is Keith and Catherine Nixon.
any comments? Seeing none, okay. Move on then to consent agenda. City manager.
The consent agenda is to approve the minutes from the city council meeting on September 18th, 2018, approve the minutes from the city council meeting on October 2nd, 2018, take action to approve the engagement agreement for the audit services with Gibson Rodak Patterson LLC for the fiscal year end September 30th, 2018. Audit, approval of Dennis Foley to represent Ward 5 on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and take action to approve the updated job descriptions for finance clerk 1, 2, and 3, foreman, manager, public works director, municipal court clerk, records clerk, executive administrative assistant 1 and 2, and city secretary.
Any comments?
Consent.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Yes, sir. Motion's been made second. Any questions? I've got one real quick one. On Dennis Bobby, when is he supposed to report?
That's why the council approves the consent agenda. And so
Immediately.
already checked with the attorney.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those against, sign, motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to item 7.
Our first item under information and discussion is a quarterly report from First Flight by Chief Clinical Officer Red Gerhardt, or Ann. My understanding is he's not here. Is someone else reporting?
It's definitely not.
You got to follow in.
Well, Mario Escobedo, paramedic for the first one. Can give you some call and flight volume. For the first quarter, there was a total of 105 flights, 20 ground transfers, and 7 missed transfers. For quarter 2, 39 flights, 37 ground transfers, and 36 missed. Then third quarter, it's 82 flights, 1 ground transfer, and then 2 missed.
Yes, sir.
What is, you say missed, they have a total of 45. What does that mean, you missed?
Missed, that means another flight service or ground company came and picked up the patient and transferred to another facility.
What was that again?
Okay, that means, missed transfers, that means us, First Flight, couldn't take the patient to wherever the patient needed to be, so another company came in and transported it.
Yeah, First Flight's located here. They can't pick up someone they bring First Flight.
Who do they normally bring? Whoever's available?
I think AeroCare, that's the closest one. I think that's out of Post Office.
What's that?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. City Manager.
Mayor, our next report is the airport report, end of year by Ed Engel.
City Council, Mayor, just going to bring up what we did for the year of FY18. We finally completed the RNAV GPS runway for 2-3, which has been a long-going project. The city, not at any fault of the city, it's just the FAA is kind of slow at moving. Presently we have a project coming up. Matter of fact, the meeting's going to be October 24th. Pre-construction meeting out at the airport. This is to improve our ramp, our taxiway, and I believe some part of the runway. This has been kind of a long-going thing. We had to put a Band-Aid on it back a few years back, and the Band-Aid is just about worn out. We have a letter of interest in the runway lighting that the TxDOT Aviation has accepted, and they're going to look at it. We're probably looking at the year 2021 for that project to come into play. And we have a couple of hangar projects that have been suggested. They're still working on getting their end of it together for individuals to build some new hangars out at the airport. We have upcoming projects as far as we're looking at is ramp parking for big aircraft. This is a big issue with me. The relocation of the AWAS and planning for trying to make some kind of deal with TxDOT Aviation and looking at our runways on a biannual deal so that we can make sure that our runways stay in good working order. And then, of course, we've always had the terminal in the back of our heads, and we're still looking at that possibly down the road. That's pretty much what I have to say. Any questions?
Good report. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Okay, C, City Manager. City Manager, sorry, Councilman Stevens.
That's okay.
I'm kind of upbeat.
No, I can't come close to this. Hey, I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about the process we use to ensure that hotel occupancy taxes are collected. City from hotels and Airbnbs. Lots of questions about where are we. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. We have an action on it, but I just thought I would make sure we're all up to speed in the process, and probably does go back to Jessica. Between her and Megan, they got the brains on it. I just want to get it on the table so we can talk about it next week.
The city currently has a very informal process on collecting the hotel, motel, Airbnb taxes. It used to be the comptroller had a report that they would send out to the city, and the city would be able to easily identify and send out billing based on those numbers. That report is not available to cities anymore except through an open record request. We made a request and it came back with not a lot of money. So the process that we're currently using is based off of prior years' submission of hotel taxes. And Megan basically has trended what we received in the past from different businesses, and then using it to estimate what would be owed to the city and sending them a reminder. Because there's not a formal process of reporting to the city in place, and we can jump in on this. I don't think that legislatively they've allowed cities to create a report for a report to be filed with the state that also goes to the city, so that you can match up numbers. So it's kind of good faith. Have some that are really good about paying monthly or quarterly. Others that have fallen behind, and others that kind of need regular reminders. There is, through the legislation, a process for the city to place a lien on the property for people that are not paying. However, when you place the lien, you have to put the dollar amount, and in order to put the dollar amount, you really need to know exactly what is owed. That's where we come to the because you don't have access to know exactly what is being reported to the state to be able to figure what our portion should be. The state recently worked out a deal with Airbnb Corporation where they collect the state's portion and pay it out to the state, but there were no provisions made for the city. So it's up to us to a private investigator to see who is posting on Airbnb or or any of the other short-term rental online companies to see who is doing Airbnb. When we do find out about them, we send them a really nice letter congratulating them on starting their business and reminding them that they should be collecting taxes on behalf of the city. And that's pretty much what we're doing, but we're not aggressively enforcing or pursuing any delinquent taxes because, from what I understood from Megan, that it was kind of discouraged not to go after the hotels in the sense of, to the point of putting liens or aggressively sending them letters. Just send them a reminder. If they don't answer, wait till the next quarter, send them another reminder. So we have kind of looked at that, maybe changing the wording of the letter. We don't send it as often, but maybe it's a little more strongly worded. We still don't have, I think, the necessary teeth. It's the last step, and I think the last time I checked with Megan, she's got it in here. We've got 3 that are currently delinquent, and then one that pays randomly, and approximately 26 Airbnbs that are not paying.
Well, I can tell you by hotel what for 2017 around
For 2017.
2017. So if we have season 2017, and that comes through my role on the Brewster County Assessment District Board. There's a property taxes, and they have to file that information as part of work on that. So I think we can work the hotel strategy. That's fair.
Okay.
Including getting down to the percentage. It says here's your revenue, here's the percent, here's what you owe us, and file those liens. I don't know if there's any issue there, but it was a tough issue.
And so what Megan used to do is she used to go on and say, I'm looking for a room in Alpine. And it would give her a list. And it doesn't do that anymore. You have to actually like register and put your credit card information in there, like you're actually gonna do it. And then it'll give you the options that fit the budget you want. And so they kind of made it a little harder just to go in to see what's available.
So was this talked about all at TML? I would think every city in the state of Texas has this issue.
There was actually not a session on hotel taxes this year at the conference. There was not. There was at the Texas Association for Convention Visitors Bureau. And there was at the managers. There wasn't able to attend. But we are working, you know, we did the, we kind of upgraded our membership with the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association, so they're going to be providing us some additional guidance this year that our previous membership level didn't. So we're hoping that they will help us get the reports from the state that we need to be able to decipher the information they are giving us. So that we can do it.
I'm surprised we didn't have that Airbnb session because it's not only Alpine, it's all over the state, but they're having trouble with them. They're like outdoors out there. And so they're not paying their just taxes.
So since we just came back from TML, when we're gonna send a letter to TML and say, hey,
Next year, can we have some of
let's
this?
get this on the agenda. And oh, by the way, since we have our quarterly meetings, let's get that for our next quarterly segment. I don't know how next quarterly meetings will be.
It was supposed to be, it was supposed to be in,
Any connections there?
I don't know.
I
I don't know about that.
hadn't talked to,
You're right, I think so,
Yeah.
but I think it's not till February?
yeah, I think so. So we're not gonna have, I think, so I was talking to Renee about that.
Yeah.
And we were discussing it. He's asking me who's gonna have this as Ben. But we're not gonna have it. We haven't had one in the last quarter for several years now.
Yeah, because of the holidays.
Holidays, yeah,
So
absolutely.
they did it in February, either end of January,
Yeah, like we did.
like we did ours,
So that's be a good
but,
subject.
yeah,
So I think the hotels, we can work that one's straightforward. It's the Airbnb ones are a challenge. I think actually the team that helps out.
Yeah.
It's money out of our pocket.
Yep.
Which one?
Nick has any comments to that? Nick?
Vic, you still there?
I'm here. Yep. I can't see you guys tonight, but I can hear you pretty good.
Do you have any other comments that you want to make on that, or something
On the
that
hotel tax, yeah, we get involved at a stage normally where we have a considerable delinquency, and we can actually help with those demand letters. And I have in the past filed cases in district court to keep the hotel from operating until they pay the tax. That's really the remedy you have under the tax code. But as far as the new trends on how you tax Airbnb and some of the other new versions of lodging, a lot of that's still up in the air, like Jessica was saying. But if you have a taxpayer who's really getting behind, I can certainly help with that. And also, occasionally you'll have a hotel change hands through bankruptcy, and that requires some attention from us on the legal side as well. But I can certainly help Jessica whenever you want to discuss it further.
And I think at that point, the question is that the direction that council would want us to go?
Well, it's action item 15, so
We'll get there.
And
Item D is Rick's as well.
so it's mine as well. I just ask these questions. So what's not clear to me is our process for approving ordinances. I know what our city charter says, but we have different processes we've been using, and so I'm just trying to figure out what is the process for approving ordinances, how many public hearings, how many readings, because it's hard to keep track of the bouncing ball.
And I think that's a good question for Mick.
Yep, the charter is in section 3.14 of the charter.
Yep.
And I'm really glad you brought that up because I think traditionally in Alpine, we have continued having 2 readings on ordinances, even though the charter really only requires 1.
Yes.
I think that the way that worked, Rick, Councilmember Stevens, is that before Alpine was a home rule city, they used the 2 reading rule like most ordinance, 2 reading requirement that most general law cities use. And so what's actually occurred is, under my observation, is the first reading, there's a public hearing and then a first reading, and then the ordinance is adopted at the next reading. And I think part of that was a question about whether you could have a reading of the ordinance on the same night you have a public hearing and at the same meeting. But according to the charter, and there is no contrary law, you can have your ordinance, it has to be in writing and considered after a public hearing that there's published notice of for the public to know about. And you can have that ordinance considered at the same agenda, the same meeting after the public hearing is complete. So there's really under the charter only 1 requirement for the ordinance to be read, only for 1 reading, not for 2. But I've observed, and I think most of you have, that customarily Alpine has used the 2 reading process. There's really nothing illegal or wrong about that, but the charter contemplates 1 reading after a public hearing.
Okay, so that's one question. Thanks, Mick. I happen to be in favor of 2 readings.
Yeah.
Because when you have the first reading, everyone gets an opportunity to walk through. It's out there. We talk about it. Then that also gives notice for everyone to have public hearing, so they can then go do their homework, respond back to it. And then at that same meeting when the public hearing is, then council would approve it. That's the experience when I came on to council. But we seem to have gone now to 2 public hearings. And I thought there was a requirement for only 1 public hearing.
There's a requirement for only 1 public hearing. I think on occasion, or for a while, we've had 2 public hearings. That's not required. There's certainly no prohibition against it. And you know, traditionally, the mayor and the council have taken public comment anyway on significant items. Yep. But as far as a formal public hearing, there's only a requirement for 1, and that would be before the first reading, or the same meeting, but at least before in the first reading in time on your agenda.
Okay.
Now,
So,
I would like to point out, though, something that is a little cumbersome in the charter, and that is if you have the public hearing and have the ordinance considered at the council meeting, and there is an amendment to the ordinance, or the council determines there's a need for rewording, your charter in section 3.14, the City of Alpine Charter, would require us to start over and take that amended ordinance with the changes and have another public hearing after publication of notice at a later meeting.
yeah.
And that has occurred on occasion since I've been city attorney. And my guess is that's how the 2 reading process really came to be, so that everybody would have full time to contemplate after the public hearing and make a change if they wanted to.
Yeah, fair enough. So my thought is it's probably worthwhile that we have a resolution or something to make sure we're all lined up on that. I happen to be in favor of the first and second reading along with the public hearing. I think that makes sense for exactly what Nick talked about. Does that make sense to you all? And I'll bring that back to a resolution next week, and that's easy.
So would we do a first reading first, and then the public hearing,
Yes.
and then the second reading?
Yes, that way you get all the wordings taken care of, like Lucy just walked through, and the ones that say, I'm not sure we're talking about whether I think that way we get the ordinance right to what we think we're talking about. Then it goes out to public hearing. Then we get public hearing and come back and then conclude it.
That would comply with the charter. Yes.
So Mick, I need you to clarify something. When you were going through that, you mentioned a published notice.
Yep.
5 days prior.
So, for example, the public hearings that we had today, did you publish them?
Uh-huh.
Were not published.
Well, your charter requires a publication of notice. Now,
Okay,
what?
so now knowing that we should have published, we're gonna have to put them on an agenda again and do the process over.
Well, if there wasn't public notice published of the public hearings going forward, and that would be true of any public hearing you have, you know, the charter requires public notice of the public hearing to be published. So if you go to 3.14, that's the wording that's actually used.
Okay. So the other thing that, I think our original discussion on this came up during the time that we were adopting our budget and tax rate and had an annexation going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So those requirements under those specific statutes for finance and annexations,
They exceed
the charter?
Those exceed the requirements of your charter. In other words, they require notice to be published well in advance of the meeting. We looked at that a few years ago. Actually, the notices for adoption of the budget and adoption of the tax rate and also annexation ordinances, those statutes require notice that exceeds your charter requirement anyway, Jessica. So they're okay.
So that would not fall into a regular resolution, because again, depending on what your tax rate is, you might have to have 2 public hearings.
Yeah, yep.
Well, that's possible. Yes, I suppose so.
Okay.
So this would be for any ordinance or amendment to an ordinance not related to budget, taxes, or annexation.
Right, because those statutes, the Budget Act and the tax code and the annexation laws already require publication of notice and hearings that exceed your requirements for a regular ordinance.
So
the resolution needs to exclude those items.
I'll draft it, come back to you two, and you can say, yeah, that works, and then we can come back to council and go, that works. Okay? Make sense?
So we will have to do these same public hearings.
We're gonna come back and do it again. Okay,
So let everybody know if they missed it tonight.
thanks, mate. Okay, that's why I asked.
Go ahead and move on to the action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts, including where funds are coming from if applicable. Action items limited up to 10 per meeting. Citizens are allowed to comment, limited to 3 minutes after being called upon by the mayor. Citizens are required to state their name, the ward in which they reside. Party will be given to citizens of Alpine and those who own business or property in the city. Individuals who do not live in or own business or property in the city limits of Alpine will be allowed to speak if there's time available. City manager.
Mayor, I would request that council delete item number 8, just follow the proper publication.
We can still do a first reading.
We've already done the first reading.
Oh, we have already done the first
We
reading.
have
So,
already done.
okay, the reason I say this says right here, first reading,
Oh, no, we've already done a first reading.
that's part of the process, keeping track of first reading, second
Second
reading.
reading, yeah.
So we've already done the first reading.
Yeah. This was supposed to be the adoption of this ordinance.
That's what.
So I would ask the council to delete till the November meeting.
So I'll move that we table this till the November meeting.
Any discussion?
I think it needs to be deleted.
We will delete it
From the agenda.
from the agenda.
And then
And then, okay.
Okay.
Motion been made, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Raise your right hand. Opposed by sign, so it's being deleted. Thank you very much. Okay. This one's a joint one, so take it first, item number 9. City manager or Councilman Steve.
The item is discuss, consider, and take action to approve the increase in hangar lease rentals of 10 cents per square foot for ground lease rates.
That's a penny.
Is that a penny?
It is a penny.
I don't know why I was thinking it was 10.
Okay.
10 cents will be a little bit steep.
Lease rates at the Alpine Hesperus Municipal Airport.
Okay, so
So, here we go.
So in order to get the discussion going, I propose that we approve the increase in hangar lease rentals of 1 cent per square foot for the ground lease rates at the Alpine Hesperus Municipal Airport for those leases for which this is applicable.
okay, motion been made, second. Any discussion?
So now for discussion.
There you go.
So the data that Megan provided, there's 39 leases out there. 31 are under the contract that would be impacted. The leases were originally established at 10 cents a square foot. It has a provision in the lease to increase the rate by a penny per square foot on an annual basis. And you saw in your handout in terms of the rate at which they were increased. This proposal would take it up to 15 cents per square foot, which to the city nets an additional just shy of $500. And when you think about the total cost of the leases, because the city only owns the land, the hangars are all owned by the individual hangar owners. This is a very small element associated. So if you take a 1,000 square foot hangar, you're talking basically $10. So that's fairly inexpensive a year. And if you think about the price of low lead fuel, if you're a piston driver, that's 2 gallons of fuel. So that's not a big number. New leases that were put in place, just by information, there's 8 of them. All of the new lease, new hangars have been built since 2017. Go by the new lease. We have an automatic cost of living rate increase that's put in, so it automatically keeps track of inflation. So this increase does not impact. My view has been, not only as a hangar owner, but from a city standpoint, it makes sense to go with the new lease, but there are many who just choose not to go on to the new lease. So that's their choice. And some of these leases last as long as they can. So, that's the background.
Any more discussion?
So I understand correctly, the fees collected are basically on the land belongs to the city.
That's correct.
Hangars to the private individuals. The people who have built the hangars, are they commercial or are they private?
Depends on some are, so they're all private. Some are privately owned, some are owned by companies. So it all depends upon what the tax entity is that individuals have.
The city is primarily responsible for the maintenance of the land around the hangars. That includes also the roads, the parking lot next to the hangars.
So it all depends upon how much land is leased by the hangar owner. Some hangar owners leased water space they're responsible for, ultimately they're responsible for. The city maintains the common areas, including the terminal area.
Any more discussion? Those in favor? Raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Let's move on to the next item.
Here, the next item is discuss, consider, and take action to award service contract for the master park plan.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would move that we award the service contract for the master park plan as delineated in second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Yes, sir. Oh.
Carl Fleming, Ward 5. I only have one question. How much is that contract?
City manager. Answer that.
We budgeted 25,000. The lowest bid that came in for this particular project was 25,820. So we'll probably be $820 over that budgeted amount. I'm going to try to negotiate with them to get that.
Thanks, sir. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, motion carries. Item 11.
And this item is to discuss, consider, take action to award a service contract for the city's wastewater treatment facilities.
So, Mr. Mayor, to get the ball rolling, I propose that we approve the service contract for the city's wastewater treatment facilities.
Okay, motion been made and second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir, I do have a discussion on that. So, in reading the package, I know there were, I've got the right one here, there were 3 bidders. And the one that is being proposed is Park Hill, Smith, and Cooper. And I have a huge issue with Park Hill, Smith.
Okay. Is that, sir?
It's the way in which their fee structure is. So the only way I would support this is it being a fixed fee basis, not on a fixed price basis, not on a fee basis.
So if you'll notice in here, this is an RFQ, a request for qualifications. There is no fee in it. In submitting the application to Water Development Board, if the funds are awarded, they are paid based on a percentage set by the state from those funds.
So we wouldn't pay for it.
Unless it would be split between a loan grant, usually under planning, they cover 100%, but it's going to depend where we are with the application as the review process. But that fee amount is then set by the state. So it's like the CDBG that we have also, engineers can't charge more than the number set by TDA. Under Water Development Board, USDA, or NADBank, it's the same. They set a max fee for engineers on the projects based on the dollar amounts. Size of the project.
And the reason I raise this issue, I'm very familiar with Park Hill, Smith, and Cooper. They drive the price up to the maximum possible so they can get the maximum. And which, in my view, is not necessarily.
I, on the other hand, have worked with them for a long time on various water and wastewater issues. In looking at the other qualifications that came in, you can see there was a large difference in the scoring based on the experience of the other engineering firms. Park Hill is currently providing us the preliminary services for the wastewater in dealing with TCQ and addressing the last 2 TCQ and they have actually done that at very reasonable rates. They're also currently providing us mapping services to help us get started for the needs assessment, because we'll need to provide them with that. And I believe they're doing that for 4,000 plus.
Yeah, well, I get it. I just want to watch.
Yeah, you've got experience from their architectural side. Yeah. Me from the engineering side is different.
Good.
And again, I'm very familiar with them, and that is one thing I always watch their billing. And being familiar, they know they're not going to pull them.
Good.
They know.
Great.
Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, let's move to item 12, City Manager.
Next is discuss, consider, and take action to approve the first and final reading for an application for a replat for Keith and Catherine Nixon. Property identification, street address is 503 and 505 West Road, Alpine, Texas 79030. Legal description is Carpenter Edition, Block 13, lots 8 and 9. Property owners Keith and Catherine Nixon. And Mayor, I would check with Nick. I don't believe this has to be published. At least in the statute that I have, it does not indicate that it needs to be published. And it's not an ordinance. I just want to make sure given the way we have it.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay, great. So we can move forward.
Okay. let's get the ball rolling.
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose we approve the final reading of the application for the replat for the Nixon's property at 503 and 505, Town of West Road in Alpine. Description of covered edition lot 14, lots 8, 9, and the property owners being approved for the capital.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay, item 13, city manager.
Discuss, consider, and take action to adopt a social media policy for the city of Alpine.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I move that we adopt, that we approve to adopt the social media policy of the city of Alpine.
is there a second? Okay, motion's been made and second.
Who's second?
Any discussion?
I have some questions.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Okay, so, first question says under scope, this applies to volunteers, elected official boards and commissions, and they're all referred to as employees in this policy. Well, but that's,
So we're including that as a broad definition to not have to repeat that list throughout. There are exceptions, and so there are special sections for boards and commissions, and special sections for elected officials. But the policy would apply, and when we hold anyone who is appointed to a board or is elected, to comply with at least the ethical standards of this policy.
so that was the first I want to point out. Second is it talks about social media administrators. It says city employees expressly designated by their department directors maintain oversight of their department social media sites. How is that determined? Does that would apply, yeah, like 4 or 5 departments, does everyone have a social media?
So you have departments currently that already have social media pages, and may have more than one person that is posting to it. We don't know here in the office who actually has that. And the idea of this policy is that each department that chooses to have a social media page or be active on social media designate an administrator who is then responsible to ensure that the rest of the policy is followed. And that we here at City Hall know who that person is in case something gets posted that is inappropriate. We contact that one person and get in there and we take care of it.
You just identify as one person. Okay. Third.
Third is under F, public comments on social media sites. It talks about the only city's main social media site we utilize open forums. So that says no one else is allowed to use open forums.
Correct.
Okay?
The rest of them will be push sites for.
Push sites only. Okay. Let's see. Social media used by elected officials, city boards, and commissions. Item G. So social media is a great way for members of council, boards, commissioners, for functions for the council or the city. They should not represent the city on their personal social media accounts or discuss matters that involve city on their personal social media accounts. A board, commission, or elected official choose to have a social media account. They should discuss with the city manager as to format, content, and access. So, what is a social media account, and does the city have to maintain that for an elected official? What is that process? Yes, and yes, I'm just trying to understand the process.
So, if an elected official or a member of the board or commission wishes to utilize social media, whether it is Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, to communicate their position, information from their position to the public, that information is subject to an open records request. And so we would want for that elected official or the chair of that board to come in and ensure that they've got proper training and that the social media page or access is set up correctly, again, as a push only. If you, as an elected official, are discussing city business or
using a personal Facebook page to promote yourself. You are probably not in keeping with open records requests, and you probably have it set up as a forum which someone from the public can then request copies of any and all conversations on your Facebook page or through your Twitter. So we want to make sure that those are separate from what you do personally and then what you do through your elected or as a board member appointed position. Ensure that they are set up as information pages only so that we don't conversations.
So what that says, and I'll go back to the open forum discussion. That says, and I don't have an issue, I'm just trying to raise to make sure we're aware, we as council would not be allowed to have open forums on social media. So we are limiting ourselves by that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just making the observation. I mean, this side, so I can
So you go to social media in the model.
Okay.
And it is common for elected officials to have their own Facebook pages to promote their town halls, to promote special activities, to invite people for discussion for public hearings on different things. That's not unusual. And then for them to have a personal page. So you have to set them up differently. And we want to make sure that that's done right so there's no violations of the meetings and that everything is
Discussion.
No, that's all I have.
Okay. So all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And item 14, city manager.
The next item is to discuss, consider approving the City of Alpine and Brewster County interlocal agreement regarding the cost sharing of operations and maintenance for the Hal Flanders Recycling Center.
Take it back.
Mr. Mayor. I believe we approve the City of Alpine, Brewster County interlocal agreement regarding cost share and operations and maintenance for the Hal Flanders Recycling Center.
Okay, motion been made and second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Jessica,
Yes.
any compliments for making that?
I was like, oh no, what I forget.
Oh, nicely done. Yeah, there is only one typo.
Okay.
And that is Exhibit A
Oh, maybe I did.
at the bottom. And there's an N missing from the word not. It says does not, it should say does not. Okay, so just thought I read this stuff, so I start passing it. Okay, that's all.
That's it. You just have to spell check.
I don't know, I just circle here in red as I read it.
Okay, any more discussion? And I think it's a great move to do. Excellent. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Item 15.
We're back. The hotel and Airbnbs are delinquent on payment of hotel occupancy tax and discuss actions to be taken to ensure payments are made.
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose that City Council direct the city manager to work with the city attorney to take action for those hotels and any Airbnbs that can be identified that are delinquent on the payment of their hotel occupancy taxes, and that the city manager will report back on actions taken at the next convenient city council.
Motion been made and second. Any discussion?
So, and I'll just continue on, Jessica, as part of me representing the city on the Brewster County Assessors District Board. We went through the whole discussion of hotel value as part of the activity of setting tax rates, because we had a lengthy discussion about that today. And as part of that, we get the listing of revenue because it's used in the computation of their tax rates. And so that's how we're able to come up with the numbers and then go back and say, aha, here's where it is, and use that as the basis to the simple computation. Just using the revenue, that was already sufficient for what the then for your grant.
That's great.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Okay. And item 16, and we'll start on my left, since you're on the roll.
Just on the roll. Thank you everyone for showing up. And, these are good meetings. I appreciate city leadership and how about challenges.
I'd like to thank the first citizens that are here. 7 wishes for Ward 3 today, and it's always a pleasure to see Dr. Stockton out in the audience. Thank you for coming back. And be always kudos. What can I say? She's amazing.
On my behalf, a great meeting and great audience, and we'll see you next time.
Remember, we only have one meeting,
Probably got one meeting, one.
so maybe a long one for staff.
Okay, thanks guys. Glad you guys stuck around.
Thank you all very much for joining us in our meeting. It's a good meeting. Also, thank the city manager for the good work she's doing in turning the city around and bringing it up to where it should be. It's a long process, but she's getting it little by little. So I want to thank you for that. And now, I will entertain a motion. Not debatable, so it's adjourned. And what time is it?
Okay, thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Nick. 12.
Nick?